It is Friday Eve or Thursday evening edition of Weather for Weather Geeks, the last Weather for Weather Geeks before the Christmas holiday. We're going to talk about the Christmas forecast, some Christmas statistics, and we're going to talk about January some in this video. But first, let's get to just a little bit of a review of where we've been so far in December snow-wise. I think at this point, it's quite possible that we are done with snow for the month of December, for the year, and for the decade as well. Don't see a lot of opportunities for snow through the end of the year coming up in a week and a half. So far at the airport, it's been a fairly nondescript December snow-wise. Yes, we've gotten nickeled and dimed a little bit, including 1.3 yesterday, bringing our monthly total to 6.7, but we've had no significant daily amounts of snow as of yet. And again, I think it is very unlikely that we'll see much additional accumulating snow for the rest of the month. As far as seasonal totals go, we're up to 15.5 at the airport so far this season. 13.3 is the average through today's date, so we're just a couple of inches above average. We're also about 4 inches above last year's total through today's date. Last year through the 19th, we had seen 11.8 inches. It was a gorgeous afternoon, although it was pretty cold. We stayed in the mid-20s. Here's a quick time lapse from our Boardman camera. There we go. Sun setting now, of course, very, very early in the day, and we're just a couple of days away from the winter solstice, bringing us the shortest day of the year, daylight-wise. We'll talk about that a little bit more momentarily. In the meantime, there's a decent amount of snow on the ground across a lot of the Northeast, where ski resorts are loving it. A lot of ski resorts opening here around our region with some of the natural snow we've had and good snowmaking conditions as of late. Easy to see the snow today on our low-orbiting high-res satellite. Here's Mosquito Lake, there's Pymatuning, and this, of course, is Lake Erie. And these are not clouds. This is not cloud cover. It is the snow on the ground from our snows of the last few days across northern Ohio and western PA. Compare that to about a month or so ago, 6 weeks ago, when the ground was, of course, not snow-covered, and we still had some leaves on some of the trees. Coming up on Saturday evening, almost at midnight, the first day of winter is actually almost the 22nd this year. It's very late in the day on the 21st. It's something like 11:19 p.m. is when officially we reach the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere. That means, of course, the least amount of daylight for the year. The center of the sun's rays, the sun most directly on the Tropic of Capricorn in the southern hemisphere. And so the southern hemisphere begins their summer season while we're beginning our winter season. At the equator, roughly 12 hours of daylight, 12 hours of darkness. At our latitude, we're about 9 hours and, let's see, 40-something minutes, I believe. We've already reached our latest sunsets, and we'll reach our latest sunrises of the season coming up in 2 weeks, early January. Now, overall, our latest sunrises actually have already occurred back before we had the time change, back before standard time resumed. We had a sunrise at about 7:54. The latest our sunrise gets now that we're into standard time is, I believe, 7:48 or 7:49, maybe 7:50. So anyway, all that being said, astronomical winter will begin this weekend. Here's a look at the next 7 days. I'll get out of the way here. We're talking a big warm-up coming. Now, this will not be record territory, as I've been talking about, but, I mean, look at this stretch of weather. I mean, sunshine. Are you kidding me? In late December, this many sunny, dry days in a row? Are you kidding me? Just in time for Christmas, things are looking good. Quick word about weather history on Christmas Day here in the Mahoning and Shenango Valleys. The last 5 years, we have not had very much snow on Christmas Day. We had almost an inch 2 years ago. We had trace amounts 3 years ago. We had a very warm Christmas back in 2015 when it was in the mid-50s. And 2014 and last year were fairly nondescript days weather-wise on Christmas Day. Our coldest high temperature on Christmas Day occurred in 1983, 1 year after the warmest high temperature on record at the airport on Christmas Day. And while this year will not break any records, here's a look anyway at the list of warmest Christmas days on record here locally. The top of the list is 1982. 1932, it was 64, and we had one other Christmas in recorded history in which it reached 60 or better. That was in 1964. We had a lot of white Christmases in the 1960s, but 1964 was not one of those years. Rounding out the top 10, 51. I don't think we're going to crack the top 10. I think we're going to be in the mid-40s on Christmas Day this year. All right, the 8 to 14 day outlook. So what can we expect in the week between Christmas and New Year's? I think more of the same. I don't see much cold in this pattern at all, and therefore probably not much snow to round out the year. So if you have some time off, as the kids do, and if you happen to have time off of work in that week between Christmas and New Year's, too early to talk about how much precipitation, cloud cover, etc. to expect, but generally speaking, I think we're going to continue the mild regime through the end of the year. The Climate Prediction Center, part of NOAA, part of the National Weather Service, came out with their initial January outlook today. And what you see here are low end to medium end odds of a cooler than average month across the northern tier of states. Odds favor warmer than average temperatures in the Pacific Northwest and down across Florida, southern Texas, as well, and equal chances of a colder than average month and a warmer than average month for a good chunk of the country, including us. Now that's their initial forecast. Temperature-wise, here's the initial forecast. Precipitation-wise, suggesting an active jet stream, a subtropical jet stream, if you will, bringing frequent bouts of precipitation to parts of the Deep South and a fairly uneventful signal elsewhere compared to the average. Now, that's their initial forecast. Do I agree with their forecast? I think they're probably being a little bit conservative on the extent of the cold coming into the lower 48 states during the month of January, and there's reasons I have that opinion. Some of it is analog data, past years that have similarities to this season. Some of it is the model information. Here's a fresh look at the latest run of the European Weekly computer model that goes out 46 days, so really goes out into the future. And of course, we're not going to use this for forecast specifics. I can't tell you if it's going to snow on January 13th. But what I can tell you is what this model is showing as far as overall temperature trends over the next 46 days. It's just a model. It's not the gospel, but it is a valuable piece of the forecast puzzle. It would suggest that the year begins on a continued mild note for the first handful of days, maybe the first few days of January, very similar to the late December pattern. But then the signal does become noticeably colder across a lot of the country as we go deeper into January. First, the cold is likely centered in the west, and then it would suggest that the cold recenters itself in the eastern U.S. during the second half of January. Now, I don't know if this is right, but again, it's interesting and it's an important piece of the puzzle. And it kind of goes along the lines of this winter evolving very similarly to last winter. Last winter, we had a fairly nondescript December. January started in a fairly ho-hum fashion, and then our coldest weather of the season was very late in January and through February 1st. That was the most severe cold snap of the season. It was our most severe cold snap in a handful of years, actually. And then February, of course, did not turn out very cold at all. I'm not sure how February is going to turn out this year. I think odds favor us at some point having a cold February. We've had four in a row, a four consecutive February streak of milder than average temperatures. Not sure how this is going to pan out just yet, but I think January is going to be colder than December, and perhaps by a fair margin. Again, not just based on what I just showed you. That's just one run of one set of modeling, but on some trends in the modeling and some trends that we noted in the analogs as well. Well, as I mentioned, this is the last weather for Weather Geeks before the Christmas holiday. I've got some time off through Christmas. I'll be back on Thursday, the day after Christmas. So in the meantime, thank you as always for watching these videos. I really appreciate your time. I know these videos get geeky and long, but I hope you find some value in them, and I wish you and yours a very Merry Christmas season. And again, I'll see you back here the day after Christmas on Thursday.